So, chair. Right. Okay, normal start then, rubbing your hands together. And then tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Arm. The other side. Up your chest. Belly. And your legs. So, resting back, letting your weight drop back. And this sort of opening up in the front of your body, hands just resting. Feel the weight of your arms resting, well, wherever they are, you can rest them on your belly, on your legs, whatever. Shoulders dropping down. Like the shoulders dropping down, also back a little bit, so that adds to this opening feeling across your chest. Place your hands just on your belly so you can feel the rise and fall there as you breathe in and out. And sometimes that just encourages you to make that a little bit stronger. It's not always going to feel like that, of course, but just a reminder to your mind and your body of how we want to try and develop our breathing. Go into the upright position and just sort your posture out. So try and feel that you've got the support from the feet and your hips, maybe from the back of the chair. And then just once again, place your hand on your belly here. But notice that what might have been a push back when you were laying back actually pushes your hips down into the ground, into the chair a little bit. But that same bellows type action, drawing the air down into your lungs. And then just slowly turning your head. shoulders. Again, you may just experience that little bit of a push downwards through your hips, push your shoulders up, and of course that might well be a place where you find yourself breathing in. It's basically the same movement, an expansion from your belly upwards as a result of your feet and your hips pushing downwards, that moves your arms and initiates the in-breath. Forwards. As always, when we're looking at the breath, it shouldn't be forced. These are just things to observe when they happen. Just the processes of observing will actually help them to develop in their own time. Hands to your sides, winding around. And then all the way around. And back the other way. Gesture. Easing forwards and push back. Turn a little. And in the other direction. And back. back the other way. Yeah. Push down through the ball of 1 foot, raise the toes, the step forward. And then on the other side. Good. Settle down again. So, just feel yourself sinking down through your hips. Feel the push up, the gravity pulls your head downwards, just like compression in the spine. And then there's this springiness from the legs and the hips and the lower back that pushes you up. And just keep doing that. Let me just show you something. Show you my little friend here. It's actually meant to, oh, but if you look at this, you can see there's a spring there. And imagine your spine being a bit like that. But actually what is happening is that is extending upwards. The spaces between the vertebrae. And then, so this can happen, push down, and then, except you're not meant to wobble around like that, but you get the idea. That kind of action up and down through your spine. And also, later, we can add this, we can add the turning movement. And that also springs back. So these are all part of the, if you like, the internal mechanisms that are actually working through your body. Gravity is always pulling your head down and your weight down, and there's always a movement upwards. And then you can pick where you like in that cycle. Your hands, your arms again rotating down through their length, and then that push up from the hips and the lengthening in your spine is directed forwards. So that mechanism down and up is always there. It's one of the key sort of energy cycles that we make use of in Tai Chi. The movement is defined, if you like, in each particular case via this center part of your body, which on this occasion is tilting forwards, rolling forwards, and then back. Then change into fisherman castanet, and now you may get a sense of a direct link with that lengthening of the spine, pushing into your shoulders and down through your arms, into your fingers, pulling back along the same sort of route. Hips sinking down, feel that contraction through your back and your spine, and then feel the push up from your feet and your hips, working up your back. And then maintaining your arms in their position relative to your chest just changes this into the ball rolling movement. Again, you may find yourself just naturally falling into a pattern of breathing in as you sit back and feel your arms following you up. And then sit back and draw your arms apart. One more time. And changing. Hands twisted. One more time. Excuse me. Back to pigeon spreads its wings. So the 3-part sequence. Pigeon spreads its wings. Pushing away. You sink into your hips. Feel the push back up. Let that take you forwards. Again, sink back into your hips. Feel the push up. So if I were to exaggerate, you watch the top of my head here. It's like, notice how it came up there. I come back, I sink down, and then comes up. Before, really, I moved before. I'm really exaggerating that. You shouldn't be able to see it. And there shouldn't really be a delay between the weight moving forwards. Let me show you from the side. Well, I get to here, drop down, and then forwards. And then here, drop down. This is throwing my back out of line, by the way. I'm overdoing it, but I want you to see what I'm trying to talk to you about here. That brings me forwards. But this is felt, not seen, and that's important. So just see if you can have some sense of that going on in your back. Imagine that going on in your back, and you had that toy there showing you the springiness. That's the sort of quality of movement, the dynamic that we want in our spine, back, also in legs and arms, but thinking very specifically about the back. Do this little set one more time. And then changing. This time, turning your hands palm down, polishing the table. One more time. Now we change to the vertical movement, so that should emphasize that dynamic in your back a little bit more. And like all these internal movements, you want to feel that they're connected to each other along different pathways, and that they provide the impetus, the energy for the movement of your arms. This leaves your hands and your fingers very soft, very sensitive to what's going on around you. And that sensitivity, that softness, curiously perhaps, is an essential part of the martial aspect of Tai Chi. Because quite often it's your hands, not your eyes, that are telling you what your opponent would be doing. If you're in contact with them, you can feel the movements. It's a bit like if you were trying to navigate through a room that was dark and you had your hands out in front. If they were stiff and hard, it wouldn't be as responsive as if they were soft. And then wild goose. And then part in the clouds. Good. And then your hands drop down and dragon plucks the stars from the sky. Here we feel that spring mechanism to the side of the body more, of course. But traditionally in Tai Chi stances, the three springs, as they're sometimes referred to, would refer to your legs as the primary spring, because of course traditionally this would be understanding. Then your back and spine, they've been describing as the second spring, and the arms the third. And in that order of importance, it's regarded as. One of the interesting things about the seated exercises is that we are using our legs, of course. You're pushing down through your feet and your hips and so on and so forth. But it really does show the significance of that movement in the spine, which is easily overlooked, I think, in the standing stances. One more time. Good, and then both hands again. Like all these models, they're only useful as long as they're useful. If it doesn't make sense to you at the moment, or if you reach a limit for how far that particular approach, that particular image works for you, then just focus in a different way. These are just ideas that have grown up through the evolution of Tai Chi and Qigong over the centuries. Different people will have different views, different insights. Add in the turn. Now scooping the scene, looking at the sky, 1 foot out, knee just a little bit bent. Most of your weight is staying back, but you will feel a little bit of pressure in the heel, but also this leg, the supporting leg, obviously taking some of your weight. And just let your back lengthen, and let that lengthen extend through your arms, and then the contraction again as your hips draw you back. So again, your hips start to sink back, your head starts to come up, and that's when you start to feel that, what I described as a compression through your spine. Grasping the tiger's ears. Here, you feel that compression through the spine. We start to go towards the spine lengthened, drawing your arms around, grasping the tiger's ears. Once more. Change over. And then change. Bring the feet back. Okay, rubbing your hands together. Starting with your face. Over your head and neck. Onto one shoulder. And your arm. The other side. Up the chest. Belly. And your legs. And then feet, remember, push the shape from the side. Raise one heel and just do that a few times, pushing down gently. Helps to get the circulation into your calf muscles and up towards your legs and through your foot as well, of course. And then leaving the heel up, go around in a little circle as much as you can, like there's a stone there and you're trying to crush the stone. On the other side, up and down first of all. It's a good exercise to remember. It's generally you've been sitting down for a while, preparing to stand, and then around. Don't move the knee around too much. You don't want too much sideways movement there. Good. And then stand. So feet hip width apart, toes pointing forwards. Now sinking down and pushing up. So now you can feel the springs of your legs and your back beginning to work together. Everything gets all compressed slightly and your legs start to expand and the energy pushes up into your back and the back starts to expand. And then the whole thing reverses. Now changing. And change. And shake out. Now, let's build this up slowly. So we've got this action sinking down and pushing up. Like we did at the beginning of the class, just put your hands on the front of your shoulders. And this time, as you push up, just let that movement push your elbows out a little bit. You'll feel the expansion in the sides of your body, just as you do with the wild goose. And then what you're going to do is turn it into this rolling movement forwards. Now we're going to add the rotation in the center and that coiling up really of the spring in your back. As you go forward, turn to your left and feel how that brings your right elbow forward and let your weight drop into the right leg. So you're down in this leg here, push up, come across and down. Push up, come across and down. So we're going to go into bear play, and of course, this is in a way a looser movement in hips, so we can really get that bit of a swing into the movement. Have to emphasize what's going on in your back and spine a little bit more. So now just let your hands come out and down. So we can really feel the movement working through your back. Some bear play. Okay, and then just now have one foot forwards, and as you transfer forwards and backwards, again, this is not how it should look, but just to sort of try and make fairly visual the process. I'm going to come forward a little bit so you can see it. It's almost like when I sink into that back leg, my whole body does this. You know, like a cat when it arches its back before it jumps. And then when I go forwards, this happens. You see? But that's kind of neutralized by the fact that I'm sinking in to the front foot. And then when I go back, it's sort of like this to here. So, you know, there could be this kind of movement through the back. In fact, when we do this, we're trying to keep our shoulders level. And so, once again, this is a quality, a dynamic that is felt rather than seen. I mean, if you put your hand, for instance, in the small of your back, or maybe just sort of above or below that, you'll probably feel some of that movement. Remember, your spine has these very graceful, natural curves in them. Quite often they're exaggerated in people, but even a healthy spine would normally have that. And so, to an extent, what I was demonstrating was this, but in fact, it would be much more subtle. It would be through those curves that you sink down, and of course through the agency of the leg. And that movement, that pulsing movement through your back, up and down your spine, pushes out through the rest of your upper body, and obviously it's going to connect to your arms at some point as well. And then raising your toes and your heel. The spine has been very important in these arts. When obviously it is important. It carries the central nervous system and important blood vessels, and also a key meridian, a key energy channel, as you might think of them, found in Chinese medicine. So the spine should be felt as something alive. I've described it in the past as like a plant floating in water, but this is a slightly more dynamic qualities, a more dynamic version of that, really, I suppose you could say. And then stepping in. The other side. And raising your toes and your heel. So also we need to think about joints like ankles, knees and hips, because obviously if they stiffen up when we take a step or something like that, when the weight goes in, it's like the spring's gone rusty at a certain point, everything sticks there. The springiness comes from things like muscle, tendon, ligament, fascia, certain amount with the bones. Stepping in, but of course, muscle is the obvious source of a kind of elastic membrane. that's going to help to power your body, but there are others as well. And in fact, maybe even extend into a sense of the movement itself, the energy compressing and expanding, like I don't know, like sort of steam being compressed and then working a piston or something like that. And then taking a few full steps. And then going back. Have your right foot forwards and fisherman casting there. So I've talked before about this idea of a pause in the movement here. You know, you settle into the back leg, you go forward, you settle into the front leg, you go back, and that's when you feel that movement, the spring in your spine and your leg compressing, and then you feel the opposite movement, the extension outwards, and so on and so forth. Mostly that's when you feel it. It's not a complete sort of like hard line between settling into your foot and the movement of your weight in that sense. Now, when you go back and you settle into your back, you feel the spine compressing and you turn at the same time. Wind blows to the left. So now the rhythm is in 4 stages. You sink back, you feel what I've described as compression, and then there's an expansion as you turn. And then there's another compression and you go forwards, and then you compress and expand, compress and transfer the weight. I think compress is probably not a great term. It's a lot of these words that we have to describe these actions are kind of too dramatic in a way. Raising your toes. Don't get set in stone about the way I'm describing the pattern within the body. I'm just trying to give you a way in to feeling this dynamic within that inner landscape of your body. Remember, no one way of describing these things is ever going to be the full story. So if you're experiencing it slightly differently, that's fine. As long as you're experiencing some kind of hopefully internal pulsing relating to that idea of the springs, if that's a useful image to you. Exactly how it's working is what you do eventually is you just move beyond having to think about it, and then every now and then you observe what is happening in your body and then stepping in. The more complex movement, the more things that are happening in any particular exercise, the less clear it is exactly how to describe these things, how to define them. So we work with these ideas in the simpler movements so that we can begin to notice how our body's working with them without us having to interfere too much. A bit like a musician might work out a scale or a fingering exercise, and then from the kind of physical skill that he's picked up or she's picked up in doing that, they would then be able to use those skills in an intricate tune, but not in the same way. I mean, it's yeah, tricky. And then on the other side, fishing and casting. So I sometimes describe the process of learning these arts a bit akin to cookery. When we cook something, when we prepare a meal, we get, we get all the ingredients and we prepare the ingredients. We do what we need to do to them, chop them, whatever, and then they go into the pan as separate ingredients. But part of the cooking process is a kind of blending of those ingredients around the edges. And then wind blows the willows. So this is where we put all the ingredients into the pot and just do the movement. Maybe thinking about different things, different aspects of the movement. Raising your toes and your heel. Sometimes you might find that some parts of your body are going through that sort of compression stage, others are expanding at the same time. It varies a great deal from movement to movement. And that's why this ability to observe can be so useful. Because once we observe something, then it will start to work better. So now bringing your foot in. And bring. Good. Shake hands. So, go back to your chair. So as always, if those ideas are useful to you, make use of them. And I always think that with other ideas, something comes along, it doesn't make much sense. Always feel free to ask me to go over it again or to explain it differently. I'll do my best to do that, of course. Or just sort of like file it away, because it might not be useful today, but maybe at some point you'll be doing the exercise and think, oh, actually that makes sense. Or maybe I'll say it again and it clicks that time. So there are many different ways of actually looking at these things. There's many different ingredients in Tai Chi that blend. But in the end, no one way, no one model that we use is ever going to tell the complete story with Tai Chi, which is why with someone like Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain, we kind of sit back from that a little bit. We let whatever has worked for us settle in. We come back to that quieter center, which is really where we want the attention to the shift. We may have gone out down a particular pathway, down a particular model in one direction or another, but now we come back. So let your hands drop down and embrace tiger, return to mountain. One more time. And rest. Excellent. Thank you again. Hope that was interesting for you. Slightly different view of things. But as I say, all of these things can be significant.